Noah Baumbach on his painful writing process, family dynamics, and making the Meyerowitz stories. Noah Baumbach really wanted to write a hospital scene. The director, who's known for such character-driven relationship movies as The Squid and the Whale and Kicking and Screaming, began his latest film with the idea of focusing on the unique emotional situation of having a sick family member. What is it really like to be in a hospital, when the personal and the institutional intersect, particularly at a vulnerable time, says Baumbach. I felt like I hadn't quite seen that in a movie. The resulting work, the Meyerowitz stories, new and selected, which bows today in theaters and on Netflix, stars Dustin Hoffman as ailing patriarch Harold Meyerowitz, Elizabeth Marvel as his Debbie Downer daughter, and Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller as his bickering sons. The film gave Baumbach an opportunity to examine the complex relationships between adult children and their parents, and the challenge of defining one's life separate from their gaze. Plus, he really wanted to see Stiller and Sandler get in a fight. Vanity Fair sat down with Baumbach to talk about his 9th feature film, his decision to break it into separate vignettes, and the wonder of Marvel, who is best known for her roles as brash, stiff upper-lip types in series like House of Cards and Homeland, and is almost unrecognizable here. Vanity Fair: how do you begin a film project? Is it with a particular scene, a character? Noah Baumbach: I wrote a lot of scenes with the brother and the father, but they weren't very good. Sometimes you just write a bunch of junk and then something starts to find its way, and it's usually very frustrating. I have amnesia of how the last one got made. Feels something like childbirth. Yeah, it is. You're always dealing with a finished movie the same way you're dealing with a human being that you've brought into the world, I suppose, like you have a finished film and somehow you're like, how did I do this? It was the idea of breaking this into what I initially thought was a connection of stories that helped me see things more clearly, so that I could then find the hospital, and I could figure out the brothers. Does the film become more about memory then, once you put all this storytelling into vignettes? Maybe. I also thought this is articulating something that was more intuitive. There is a storytelling aspect to the movie. I was thinking about family stories, and how a lot of people tell the same joke twice or more times. The father will tell one son something one way, and then tells the other son another way. You have this bigger family unit, but, really, we have our individual relationships with our parents. We have stories that intersect with some of our siblings, but then we have some that they don't seem to have. Breaking it into stories helped give the film definition. Memory is part of it, of how what we think we remember are often stories we've just heard repeatedly. There's this interesting idea that runs through the movie about the damage, whether intentional or not, that parents inflict on their children. It's different on every child depending on where they fit into their parents' lives, and in what order they come. And how it suits the parents' own mythologies. How personal is this film to you? There's the question of autobiography, and then there's the question of personal, and they are all very personal. I use stuff of my autobiography and invent off of that. I'll shoot on streets in the city that I have specific memories of from my childhood, or use people, old friends of the family are always in my movies, my doormen are in the movies, that bring the familiar and bring my life into this made-up thing that we're doing. It helps me stay in an open, creative place. What else from this story is autobiographical? I have had that feeling of desperation, in a hospital, and wanting to believe, nurses and doctors, are there for you, that they are your advocates and not just working. It's not dissimilar to how children need to feel about their parents. That was more strictly stuff that I had experienced, but it all gets so mixed up in there. When you know that comedic actors like Ben Stiller and Adam Sandler are in your film, do you write differently for them? They sort of lived side by side. I'm not consciously thinking this would be good for them to do. But it was nice having that kind of guide that this would fit into, that they would be able to interpret what I was doing. With the first few people I gave the script to, some assumed that Adam was playing Ben's part and Ben was playing Adam's part. What kind of conversations did you have with Sandler for this more dramatic role? The best reaction I've ever gotten from an actor, and ever will get, was a text he wrote me after he read the script. Something really connected for him strongly. The most important development in the rehearsal process was that he could play it close to himself, which also meant that he could be funny. That was okay, because it was a part that I think he really wanted. And once we got there, he was very inside it in a way. Dustin's feeling was that Adam was playing himself if he hadn't made it, in Hollywood. Do you agree with that? He clearly responds to something deeply in the character and then also probably knows people, and I'm sure has grown up with many people who are like his character. It's a for the grace of God kind of feeling. People ask me, how do you write people who might be unsuccessful and you're not? I feel very connected to all these characters. It has nothing to do with outward success. It's something else. What defines success? Adam's character is not a successful artist, but he's an extremely successful father, but because of the way the family defines success, he feels like a failure. It's the deprogramming of those feelings and those thoughts, which is what we all do. Then there's Stiller's character, who is super successful on paper, and all he wants is his father to recognize and understand that. Right, and he's not an artist, which is also probably why he could be successful. He could exceed his father in a way that wasn't meaningful for his father. Elizabeth Marvel easily could have delved into caricature with her portrayal of this sister who is depressed and unhappy. What were your conversations with her like? Partly why I cast her is because I knew she'd do a character that would transcend that. I've seen her do a lot of theatre, and she's auditioned for me before, and I've always wanted to find something for her. She tends to play more outwardly strong people. The first thing she said to me was, "Why did you think of me?" And what did you say? Just like with the male parts, I needed there to be a lack of vanity. My impression of her was that she wouldn't care about that. As an actor, she would know there was power in being recessive. How did you work with her on this character? We worked on her voice a lot. It can get husky. She came up with this thing where the voice was almost outside her mouth in a way, it was higher. It was like everything about her character, Jean, which is separate from herself. Any time I saw any of the actors after we finished shooting, I felt like I needed a minute to adjust to the real person, because they all felt so different from those parts.